Fact is, the Fed is fully functional. The FOMC has 9 of its 12 members in place. They could raise rates today if they wanted to. They could do it tomorrow. They could do it at any time. But what's really ironic is that it's the chairman's decision not to move 5 nominees forward. We made it clear, I made it clear last week to the chairman, repeatedly, publicly, and privately, we are perfectly happy to vote on 5 of the 6 nominees. That would be 4 Fed governors and the director of the FHFA. If we did, actually most of them would get considerable Republican support. They'd move on. And if there were a concern about vacancies on the Fed, then the chairman could fix that very quickly. He chooses not to. He prefers to have the vacancies. That's his choice.
Is the White House backing that strategy of holding all the nominees up and essentially waiting for Republicans to show up at the banking committee to vote?
Absolutely, and I was in the Oval Office when the president spoke with Senator Brown, so I can confirm, not that there was any doubt, that he conveyed exactly that to the senator, that he agrees that Republicans are AWOL on the fight against inflation, and at this pivotal moment in our needs. We support Chairman Brown's decision to keep all 5 on the Fed board, pushing them forward through the committee, and we believe Republicans need to do their jobs and show up to vote for these nominees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I have to start by observing it's a little bit rich to be lectured by the chairman about not attending a markup of nominees when the chairman personally led the Democratic boycott of the Senate Finance Committee markup of 2 Trump nominees. There are several other Democrats on the committee who participated in that boycott. I guess what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. It's also rich to hear wailing and gnashing of teeth about vacancies on the Fed board and this newfound Democratic concern over inflation. First of all, I and my Republican colleagues have been on record for well over a year warning about inflation risks, warning about the excessive spending. Democrats criticized us for wanting to normalize interest rates and Fed policy. And yet here our Democratic colleagues are pushing for yet another inflation-fueling spending blowout bill.
The urgency with inflation and other issues facing the Fed. But given that Republicans have shown no signs of bending and that the Senate is poised to go on recess by the end of the week, I mean, how likely or unlikely is it that we're going to see a vote before the end of the month on these nominees?
Well, I would point you to Chairman Brown for that. He is very committed, and I'm sure, and I think as you've seen him publicly, he can be quite a bulldog when he wants to get something done. So we support his efforts to get these 5 nominees forward. There's a couple days left, and all we're asking is for Republicans.
Was basically able to perform at full strength even without the confirmed nominees. Your reaction to that?
I think there's no question that having a full federal board fighting inflation at a time where that is the stated #1 concern of many Republicans, many Democrats, and many in the American public would be the ideal situation.
The chairman said that the candidates answered the questions. Let me be very clear. Ms. Raskin was far less than candid with us. She failed to disclose that she even was a director of Reserve Trust. She failed to disclose the $1.5 million she made for that service. She failed to disclose hundreds of pages of writing, hours of speeches. When she was asked, how did she get on the board of Reserve Trust in the first place, she said she couldn't recall, which is odd because the founder and chairman. So it remains entirely unclear what happened here. All we know is that Ms. Raskin was in the middle of it. The firm on whose board she sat applied for a very, very valuable account with the Fed. They were turned down. She intervenes. They get approved, and we can't get an explanation of what happened here.
Particular mandates set out
but,
by law.
But I know about all that, but did you mean it? You said it. Here it is, big as Dallas. I read the op-ed.
Should not be choosing winners and losers.
Yes, ma'am. So you disagree with the editorial?
The editorial was one that I wrote, and I wrote it in the context of to any particular sector.
So you changed your mind?
I have made myself completely clear. The whole point of the op-ed payers to undo this.
Senator Kennedy, your time's expired.
Well, no, you went 3 minutes over.
I did, and so did Senator Toomey, but we need this hearing done by 11 o'clock.
Well, can I ask one more?
No, you've already gone 2 minutes over. Senator Warner.
It's also interesting how some of my Democratic colleagues have been so passionate about ending the revolving door. In fact, you could argue some have practically made a career out of railing against the revolving door, where people go from a powerful government regulator to go work for the industry that they regulated, they enrich themselves, and then maybe they come back to do it for another loop. Is there a more archetypical example than Ms. Raskin? Senator Warren recently tweeted, called Randy Quarles corrupt because after he left the Fed, he went back to the firm, the private equity firm that he had founded himself. So I guess it's corrupt if a Republican does that, but the rules don't seem to apply in the other directions. The chairman said that the candidates answered the questions. Let me be very clear. Ms. Raskin was far less than candid with us. She failed to disclose that she even was a director of Reserve Trust. She failed to disclose the $1.5 million she made for that service. She failed to disclose hundreds of pages of writing, hours of speeches. When she was asked, how did she get on the board of Reserve Trust in the first place, she said she couldn't recall, which is odd because the founder and chairman says in an article in today's Wall Street Journal, he's known the Raskins for decades. When Ms. Raskin was asked if she ever contacted the Fed on behalf of Reserve Trust, first she evaded the question repeatedly, and then eventually she replied by saying she couldn't recall. Well, that's funny, because the Kansas City Federal Reserve president recalled the conversation very well. The chairman of the Federal Reserve Trust recalled the conversation. He wasn't even part of it. But we're supposed to believe that Ms. Raskin just couldn't recall. And let me remind everybody why this is important. Reserve Trust is a fintech company. It's based in Colorado and applied for something that's extremely valuable, a master account at the Fed. To my knowledge, there's not a single fintech in America that had gotten that. And unsurprisingly, they were denied. Their application was turned down. Then Ms. Raskin, on the board, called the Fed. And shortly thereafter, the Fed does a 180-degree reversal and approves the master account. And to the best of my knowledge, as of today, there's a grand total of one fintech in America that has a master account with the Fed, and it is Reserve Trust. So we asked an obvious question. Why the reversal? Why the 180-degree change? What changed? First, we got stonewalled. Then we finally get a partial answer from the Reserve Bank of Kansas. And let me just quote one sentence that summarizes it. Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas says, after this denial, and that's a reference to the denial of the master account application of the Reserve Trust. After this denial, RTC changed its business model, and the Colorado Division of Banking reinterpreted the state's law in a manner that meant RTC met the definition of a depository institution. That's from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City. The only problem with that is on Tuesday night, the Colorado Division of Banking says that's not true. And this is what they said, and I quote, "We consider the statement that the division reinterpreted state law as a misrepresentation of our practice." So it remains entirely unclear what happened here. All we know is that Ms. Raskin was in the middle of it. The firm on whose board she sat applied for a very, very valuable account with the Fed. They were turned down. She intervenes. They get approved, and we can't get an explanation of what happened here. Is that fair to all the other fintechs across America that would also like to have a master account, and they've been turned down? How is that fair to anybody? And how is this committee doing its job if we don't insist on getting some answers to this question? But we get stonewalled. We get answers from the nominee that she can't recall, and we get basically nothing from the Fed. So, Mr. Chairman, it's your choice if you want to continue to preclude the possibility of having 4 nominees from the Fed confirmed and the FHA director. We are quite happy to process those nominees. But we want answers before we vote on Ms. Raskin. And let me just close with a quote justifying a boycott of recent markup of nominees. And I quote, "By refusing to demand honest, transparent information about the business dealings of these nominees, the committee failed to do its job on behalf of the American people." That is Sherrod Brown, February 1st, 2017.